So China is having problems opposite of what we're having over here. Where we're having inflation problems, everything costs too much. They're having deflation problems, which means that prices are going down. Be a nice problem to have. Well, for us at least. Over there, not so much, and could push them to do some weird stuff that we've done over here that you can argue does or doesn't work. I would argue doesn't work. But here we go. This is CNN business, so whenever it begins with CNN, you know what kind of dumpster fire it's going to be. But let's go. China is another massive headache now. It can't stem deflation. While many central banks around the world are still trying to cool inflation, China is grappling with falling prices. Consumer price index dropped 0.5% in November on an annual basis, biggest fall since the depths of the pandemic 3 years ago, according to data released by China's National Bureau of Statistics on Saturday. The drop marked an acceleration in the rate of deflation from October, when the CPI fell 0.02%, or 0.2%, sorry, from a year earlier, prompted calls for urgent action from Beijing to boost demand and prevent a downward spiral of prices. The data come days after Chinese policymakers vowed to strengthen fiscal and monetary support to boost the world's second biggest economy, which is struggling with a real estate crisis, which we've talked about on a previous podcast. Which they just have this real estate bubble. Ooh, I get the burps. Excuse me. And dry mouth. Um, yeah, high youth unemployment and subdued consumer confidence. Uh, Sounds a little bit like what we were going through over here. China has been fighting weak prices for most of this year due to the property market slump, weak spending. Deflation is bad for the economy because consumers and companies may put off purchases or investments in anticipation of prices falling further. That in turn could further slow the economy and create a vicious cycle. Consumer inflation began slowing in February and turned negative in July for the first time in more than 2 years. It returned to positive territory in August and was flat in September, but fell back below zero in October. China's deflation situation is deepening with the triple whammy from domestic food prices, international oil price corrections, and weak domestic demand. Now, analysts from the city said in a Sunday report, good thing that Citi's weighing on this. Citibank, which is one of the guys that were involved in all of our financial stuff over here. So good job you're weighing in on this. Signs of price weaknesses are now spreading from goods to services, they added. Food prices were a major drag on the CPI, down 4.2% in November from a year earlier. In particular, pork prices plummeted 31.8%. Nobody liked the pig over there. Gasoline prices declined after international oil prices hit their lowest level in months in November. Services inflation also slowed. It was up just 1% from a year ago last month, compared with 1.2% increase in October. Producer Price Index, or PPI, which is mainly driven by prices of commodities and raw materials, dropped 3% in November, down for 14 months in a row. So here's where it gets squirrely. More stimulus needed. That word stimulus, it works, or does it? The worsening deflation pressure has cast further doubt over China's economic recovery. There is no time for policy hesitation to prevent a vicious loop between deflation, confidence, and activities, the city analyst said. Late last month, Pan Gongsheng, governor of the People's Bank of China, said in Hong Kong that China would keep monetary policy accommodative to support the economy and expected consumer prices to rise in the coming months. On Friday, China's top officials convened for a Politburo meeting and vowed to do more to expand domestic demand and spur consumer spending. This is the problem. This is the problem, I think, with capitalism. Capitalism in itself, and the idea of this, that I am gonna say I let's say I make a good and then I sell that good to John over here, and then John uses that good to make another thing, and then he sells it to Tom over here, and then Tom, sorry, they're all guys, but whatever. And then Tom does the same. He sells it to Gina. Here, we added a girl in there. And Gina is the end seller to the consumer. And the consumer buys it off Gina, and bang, bang, bang. You get this nice little tree of people that are making money, and society's rolling along. Problem is, you got all this price and manipulation going on behind the scenes to try and make people buy off Gina. Or now, instead of having three middlemen, you have, one middleman, and now all those those middle income sort of brackets are gone. So this big entity over here is lobbying the government to say, hey, listen, we've got to get more people buying from Gina because we're selling to Gina and Gina is not buying as much from us anymore. And so you start getting some backward manipulation in from the government to try and push this kind of stuff. And they're trying to pull all these strings. And suddenly it's like, oh, well, we need stimulus now. Now we got to give money over here to save, I forget what first guy's name. Let's just call him Tom. We got to save Tom over here because Tom's sales are down and Tom's got shareholders and Tom's got, you know, CEO and a board of directors and such, and they've all got to get fat, you know, big bonuses and such. So that's where the trouble is with this kind of stuff. And now they're just gonna do the same thing with these. Probably add something like quantitative easing in, and they're gonna be in the same trouble the U.S. is in with, you know, a massive amount of deficit and money just, you know, so much money being out there, it's not chasing any goods. So, anyways, I'll just finish this article. I can get on a tangent on this. Friday, China's top officials. Oh, I already said the Politburo meeting, along with the annual Central Economic Work Conference that is expected later this month, typically sets the tone for economic policy for the coming year. Investors are waiting for more details from the CWC about economic policy for next year. The city analysts adding that they expect imminent cuts to the reserve requirement ratio, the amount of money banks must keep in reserve, and interest rates. So, again, all of this, like I said, is just manipulation, just constant manipulation of a market that on its own, without a bunch of manipulation, actually works decently well. So good luck. Good luck, China. Good luck with quantitative easing. It works really, really well, at least for the top 1%. For the rest of us, it just adds to our debt load.